At that point, I was emotionally divorced from final expense, and I said, you know what, I'm just going to look around and do something else. So I got a job, and I worked for a company called Aramark, selling uniform services. And I made a decent salary to begin with, as associate sales position. And it was funny because this was my first job, right? So I've always worked for myself in a professional capacity up to this point. I was like 26, 27, something like that. And I never worked for anybody else, and I absolutely hated it. I started working there, and I never knew what corporate bureaucracy was until this. I never knew what it was like to have somebody work in a job they hated, and they would bitch and moan about it, but they would never do anything about it. And they would spend literally years working for a company they could care less about, that they didn't want to deal with, that they pretty much despised of really deep down, but would never ever solve the problem. And so I looked around and I saw all these people, not just in the selling, but also in the administration, the management, and all aspects of the job. I never saw anybody that actually enjoyed what they did. And what I saw was kind of like death warmed over. It was miserable. And these guys, they liked each other, and they're formal with each other, nice. They're good people. Don't get me wrong. I'm not, disrespecting them. But you could tell that they just went along to get along, as the old saying was. And I realized, I thought, God, I can not imagine myself. Does that sound familiar, Brian? I could not imagine myself sticking in something like this, because it was just completely sucked the soul out of me. And I never experienced this, guys. I mean, I've never worked for anybody else, so I felt like a newbie. And so I was 6 weeks into the business, and I was sitting there on the couch with my wife, and I said, I'm going to get back into final expense. If there's a way, I'm going to do it. And so I schemed my way into how I was going to do final expense, starting off the right way, like I should have done before I did all the stupid crap that was just not timed well, nor smart and prudent to do with either, and got back to work. I was lucky enough in my wage job that I could flex my hours. So I would go out after 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon. I'd work till 10 o'clock at night, 2 or 3 times a week, once on Saturday, all day Saturday. And I did that for 5 or 6 months until I got an advancement at the job. Just because the other guy quit, I had to fill his role as a salesperson. And then I was under a little bit more scrutiny at that point, unfortunately. But I still made it work. I would work Monday through Friday, put my time in and my requirement in at my sales job, my wage job, and then do the same thing. I'd run about 12, maybe 15 appointments a week selling final expense. And slowly but surely, my goal was to save enough up capital-wise for a proper direct mail campaign, because that's what I realized I got, shortchanged on. I got away from that and spent all this money on stupid shit when I should have been paying for direct mail leads and just sticking to the story. And but also was saving up from a capital basis to make sure that if something happened to me after I left my profession here, my wage job, that I would have a little money to fall back on. So, and then my wife got pregnant with twins. And then that kind of made things a little bit more interesting. But I nevertheless determined that was even more reason not to work for these people. So, fast forward to about August, my wife got hit. She was 36 weeks pregnant with twins. And I mean, like her stomach was like this big, And some asshole passed out at the wheel. And she was going up the hill like this, and this guy came around and swiped her. And that was my last day in the field selling Aramark. And I remember flying home at 95 miles an hour down the highway to get to her. She was okay. The babies were fine. They delivered via C-section a little bit early, but they're actually full term, so it was okay. But I put I went on 3 months maternity leave, or I should say paternity leave, in order to keep my health insurance, but went right to work selling final expense full time. And here I am.